Does the UK need a four-runway airport to maintain its status as a leading global aviation hub? Joining me to discuss this important topic on the opening day of the Farnborough Air Show are Willie Walsh, Chief Executive of International Airlines Group and parent of British Airways, Tim Clark, President of Emirates Airline, and Max Kingsley-Jones, Flightglobal's Airline Business Editor. Flightglobal are hosting this event at their media centre. So, gentlemen, we're all eagerly awaiting the government's latest consultation paper on how to address the hub capacity crunch at Heathrow Airport. Willie, if we can turn to you first, does the UK need a four-runway airport, and can it realistically be located at Heathrow given the issues over noise, environment, etc.?
Well, based on all of the projections that I've seen, I believe the country does require four runways in the long term. It doesn't need four runways today, but it needs to map out how it's going to get from a two-runway critical hub airport to securing the long-term position for the UK. And quite honestly, this government has no idea how to do that. So I'm not eagerly awaiting this consultation because I don't believe anything concrete will be derived from it.
Okay. Do you think a four-runway airport, though, could be located at Heathrow?
I'm not the expert. You know, I've heard people say that you could. I think there are a lot of challenges to doing that, but I think we've got to understand how we get from where we are, which is the #1 international airport in the world, critical contribution from aviation to the UK economy, to how we secure that position in the long term. And we've lost so much ground over the last few years debating this issue. I still firmly believe that it's not going to be addressed, and we'll still, 2050, I said this to you before, BA will be flying from a two-runway airport at Heathrow.
Tim, what's your take on this issue? Emirates obviously are a big operator out of Heathrow.
Well, I think the need for additional runway capacity, particularly at Heathrow, has already been established. I don't think you need government inquiries or consultations to tell you that. There are all sorts of issues that we know about. So if you don't take a decision, if you continue to kick the can down the road, as Willie says, Heathrow will suffer. There are multiple proposals for additional runway capacity in the southeast, second runway at Gatwick, second runway at Stansted. But in the end, they will help, but airlines tend to favour hub operations. And one's only got to look at the history of Gatwick and Heathrow to see how strong Heathrow is, and as Willie says, it is probably the most formidable international hub on the planet today, and that seems to be lost on the political establishment and the wonders of the economic multiplier on the British economy as a result of having a hub as powerful as that is great.
But do you think, because of the noise issues particularly, is Heathrow realistically the location for a four-runway airport?
I think you've got to re-examine just what that noise issue is. The modern jet, the 787, the 350, even the 380, are much quieter. So I think you've just got to say to yourselves, well, let's have a look at this noise issue and see just how bad is it compared to the VC-10s and the Tridents of yesteryear.
Okay. Max, what's your take?
I think there's ways of making Heathrow into a four-runway operation if you use the plan already for a third runway, and perhaps using the facilities at Northolt, which is a few miles to the north. The problem, as Tim was saying, is noise. The airport is in the worst possible place. You wouldn't put an airport at Heathrow if you were starting today, because prevailing winds and where the airport's based means a lot of the flights have to arrive or depart over London, over inhabited areas. But the other problem that there is, as well as finding space for the runway, is the infrastructure, the road infrastructure, the transport infrastructure, which is way behind in being developed to cater with the traffic there today. And as they go forward, it's really making that the feed to those to the airport, bringing the passengers in and being able to tackle that.
Okay. Now, of course, this show is all about new aircraft innovation, but one notable issue this year has been the emergence of wing cracks on the A380 Super Jumbo. Tim, Emirates is the largest operator globally of the A380. Are you over the worst of the commercial disruption associated with fixing these cracks or not?
I think we are now, simply because the initial emergence of this problem caused us to ground the aeroplanes for fix, and that disrupted the network operations. But as we've got on top of it, as Airbus have come along with more solutions to the issue, we've planned them out. They all have to go through a period of grounding, and it won't be until January 14 that the first aircraft comes out with effectively the new internal wing design. So up until that time, all Emirates aircraft, of which we will have about 35 by then, will have to go in for a bit of remedial work. But we plan that now, so in terms of network disruption, it's not so bad as it was in the early part of this year.
Right. And Willie, I think BA have got several A380s on order. Has this episode dented your confidence in the aircraft?
It's disappointing. It hasn't dented it fully. You know, we would like the aircraft. In fact, we would have liked to have had it in the fleet already. But it is disappointing to have to take delivery of an aircraft and then look at doing some repair to the wing. And as Tim has said, it's going to be 2014 before aircraft coming out of the production line will have this issue resolved. So, you know, Airbus will sort this out. We always, you know, are aware of difficulties introducing a new aircraft, but I think this one is particularly disappointing.
Emirates, of course, is one of the relatively new breed of Gulf carriers, growing very fast. Willie, do you believe that as a legacy carrier, IAG is competing on a level playing field with Emirates?
Yeah, I've no problem with it. You know, we've been competing with Emirates pretty much since they were founded. I think London was the first sort of international airport that Emirates served. We compete head to head to Dubai. And you know, we're profitable flying there, so I've no issue. I don't buy into all of this rubbish about cheap fuel. You know, Tim very kindly sends me a copy of his annual reports, which have been audited. I look at them and they look perfectly rational to me, so I just get on and compete with them, and I think that's what everybody should do.
Yes. I mean, Tim, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, these are very fast-growing aviation hubs, airport hubs, but they are, of course, government funded. So in this battleground of these global aviation hubs, Heathrow is obviously one, but these new ones in the Gulf, is the battleground getting skewed in favour of the Gulf hubs because of the government funding?
I think you've got to be a little bit careful when you say they're government funded. Yes, the governments get involved, as they have done all over the world. Look at the Chinese today, look at Singapore, look at a lot of European airports that have grown extensively over and who actually owns them and who actually operates them. Look, we're looking at a changing dynamic in civil aviation. If you go back the last 30 years, look at what has happened in that time. This is just an issue of the moment. Yes, there is rapid growth in that part of the world, as there is in China and Asia. Does that mean that it is over for what you call the legacy carriers? Of course it's not. The European markets are huge. The emerging markets, notwithstanding what's going on in the global economy today, are continuing to move ahead at quite a pace. Demand for air travel is hugely robust. I'm a great optimist on that. And I think there's plenty of market there for everybody. And it's how you do it. And if you're strong enough and brave enough to go out there and grab it, well, that's good for you. If you're not, well, okay, fair enough. That's just different horse for a different course, maybe. But I'm not sure. I mean, there is a movement, perhaps, of ASK production increases coming out of our part of the world as there is in China. But hey ho, how long is that going to last? What's going to happen in the next 10 or 15 years? What are the South Americans going to do when the Europeans have got themselves through the Eurozone issue? Will you see the emergence of better, stronger carriers? I don't know, it's anybody's guess, but certainly looking back in my career in this industry, it's never been a static one. It's always been particularly interesting. People come and go, but that's life.
Max, Willie's messaging here is very striking in the contrast with, say, Lufthansa, which complains bitterly about not competing on a level playing field with the Gulf carriers. But what's your view on this?
Well, I think the legacy carriers are in an interesting juncture at the moment. They know that these guys are now here to stay, and they are becoming an increasing threat to all the traffic flows across the world. And they have to decide whether they're going to compete head-to-head, the way Lufthansa seems to be, or if they want to partner with them, maybe through code-shares alliances, and get into bed with these guys and actually try and work with them as friends rather than as enemies.
But I think it highlights the issue of aviation policy. You know, look at the ambition of the Middle East countries with regard to aviation and the impact it has on their economy, and look at the lack of ambition here in the UK. You know, we have the #1 international airport in the world. We take it for granted, and we talk about closing it down. And while we're doing that, we've seen the emergence of very strong global carriers in the Middle East, all about ambition. And you know, I admire what they're doing. I admire the government attitude there. It's just a shame we don't see a fraction of that here.
And do you feel Heathrow is already getting marginalised at the expense, for example, of these Gulf hubs?
Well, without question, some of the growth that would have come to Heathrow has gone to other hub airports, including the Middle East. And that's not because the airlines operating at Heathrow are not competing. It's because we don't have a government policy that recognises the value and the contribution of Heathrow to the UK economy.
Gentlemen, I'm sure these issues will be debated further at the show. Thank you very much for joining us.